The velvet casing of the diploma felt like lead in my sweating palm. I stood in the shadow of a massive stone pillar near the exit of the university grand hall. The air around me was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and fresh bouquets of roses. Hundreds of families swarmed around their graduates like happy bees around a hive. Fathers were clapping their sons on the back. Mothers were weeping openly while adjusting the tassels on mortarboards. Cameras flashed in a relentless strobe of joy. I was the only one standing alone. My other hand clutched my phone so hard my knuckles had turned white. The screen showed the time. It was 1 p.m. The ceremony had ended 10 minutes ago. I had scanned the crowd for 2 hours. I had looked for my mother's bright red coat. I had looked for my father's gray suit. I had even looked for my brother Tyler's signature slouch. There was no one. I took a breath that shuddered in my chest and tapped the call button. The speaker pressed against my ear was warm. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings. Finally, someone picked up. Hello? It was my mother, Brenda. Her voice was not worried or apologetic. It was breathless and high-pitched. Behind her voice, I could hear the unmistakable sounds of a party. I heard the sizzle of meat on a grill. I heard the clinking of glass bottles. I heard loud music thumping a bass line that rattled through the phone line. And above it all, I heard Tyler laughing. That loud, braying laugh that always demanded to be the center of attention. "Mom," I said. My voice sounded small and pathetic to my own ears. "Where are you?" "The ceremony just finished. I walked. I have my doctorate." There was a pause on the other end. I heard her cover the mouthpiece with her hand, but I could still hear her muffling a laugh as she spoke to someone nearby. Then she came back on the line. "Oh, Nora. Honey, we completely mixed up the dates. I could have sworn you said it was next weekend." She was lying. I had sent them the invitation 3 months ago. I had reminded them last week. I had texted them this morning. "You did not mix up the dates, Mom," I said. My voice was trembling now. "You are at a barbecue. I can hear Tyler." Brenda sighed. It was a loud, exaggerated exhale that signaled she was already losing patience. "Listen, sweetie. Tyler is having a big moment today. He is launching his new business venture. We could not just cancel on him. Do not be jealous. We can celebrate your little school thing later. Do not spoil the mood. My little school thing. 7 years of medical school, 7 years of sleepless nights, 7 years of eating vending machine crackers for dinner so I could save money. 7 years of them telling me they had no money to help me while they bought Tyler new cars and paid for his failed startups. Mom," I said, "I am standing here alone in a cap and gown." Then the phone muffled again. There was a scuffle. A deeper voice boomed onto the line. It was my father, Bob. "Nora, stop it." His voice was not kind. It was the voice he used when a bill collector called. It was the voice of a man who hated being inconvenienced. Bob continued, "You are being ridiculous. Your mother is trying to host guests. Tyler has important investors here. We cannot drop everything just to watch you walk across a stage for 10 seconds. It is just a ceremony. It is just a piece of paper. A piece of paper." I looked down at the diploma in my hand. It represented the first time a Bennett had ever become a doctor. It represented the $3,000 I had wired them just yesterday because Bob swore they were about to lose the electricity. $3,000 that I now realized was currently buying steaks and beer for Tyler's friends. "You promised you would be here," I whispered. "I paid for the gas in your car so you could drive here." Bob groaned. "Do not be dramatic, Nora," he snapped. "You are always so sensitive. We will do a dinner next week. We will take a picture. It is the same thing. Stop making everything about you. Do not be selfish." Something inside my chest made a physical sound. It was not a crack. It was a snap, like a dry branch breaking in a dead forest. The tears that had been welling in my eyes did not fall. They simply evaporated. The heat in my face drained away, leaving me feeling cold and light. The noise of the graduation hall faded into a dull buzz. I suddenly saw the entire equation of my life with perfect clarity. I was not their daughter. I was their retirement plan. I was the insurance policy against their bad decisions. I was the maid who cleaned up the messes. I was the endless line of credit that kept the lights on so they could shine the spotlight on Tyler. They did not miss the ceremony because they forgot. They missed it because to them, I did not exist as a person. I only existed as a function. And utilities do not get celebrated. Utilities just get used. I looked at the phone. I could still hear Bob breathing heavily on the other end, waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to say okay, waiting for me to wire more money. I did not say a word. I did not scream. I did not beg. I pulled the phone away from my ear. I looked at the screen for 1 second, then I pressed the red button and ended the call. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I did not drive toward the suburbs to scream at my parents. I did not drive to the barbecue to flip a table or demand an apology. That would have been the old Nora. The Nora who thought her voice mattered to them. The Nora who thought if she just explained her pain clearly enough, they would finally understand. That Nora died the moment Bob told me to stop being dramatic. I drove in the opposite direction toward the city limits. My apartment was a cramped studio in a building where the elevator was broken more often than it worked. The hallway smelled of stale curry and damp drywall. I unlocked the door and stepped into the darkness. I did not turn on the overhead light. The only illumination came from the street lamps filtering through the thin blinds. I sat at my small, wobbly desk and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dim room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a fraction of a second before I began to type. This was not an emotional outburst. This was an eviction. I logged into the main banking portal. The dashboard loaded and showed the intricate web of accounts I had managed for 5 years. There was the joint checking account used for household bills. There was the savings account I padded every month for their emergencies. And there was the mortgage account for the house I was not welcome in. I clicked on the mortgage tab. The screen showed a pending transaction scheduled for tomorrow morning. $2,400. It was set to autopay from my personal checking account, just like it had been for the last 36 months. I moved the cursor to the Manage Payments button. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. I did not feel guilt. I felt the strange, cold clarity of a surgeon cutting out a tumor. Cancel recurring payment. The bank website asked me if I was sure. It warned me about late fees and potential credit score damage. I clicked yes. The confirmation banner flashed green. The financial umbilical cord was severed. Next, I navigated to the credit card tab. This was the platinum card I had opened 2 years ago to build my credit score. It had a limit of $15,000. I kept the primary card in my wallet, but the authorized user card was currently in the pocket of my brother Tyler. I checked the pending transactions. They were populating in real time. $300 at a liquor store, $400 at a premium butcher shop, $150 for party supplies. He was currently swiping my hard work to celebrate his own mediocrity. I pictured him at the barbecue. He would be holding court near the cooler. He would be bragging to his friends about his new venture. He would be ordering another round of expensive tequila shots for everyone to prove he was the big man. I clicked the tab marked Services. I selected Report Card, Lost or Stolen. The system asked if I wanted to freeze the account immediately. I clicked Confirm. Somewhere 20 miles away in a suburban backyard, Tyler was about to hand a plastic rectangle to a bartender or a delivery driver. And the machine was going to beep a harsh, declining tone. The card was dead. The open tab was now his problem. He would have to explain to his investors why the golden boy could not pay for the beer. A grim smile touched my lips. It was the first time I had smiled all day. I closed the banking tab. I stood up and pulled my battered suitcase from the top shelf of the closet. I did not pack everything. I did not want everything. I packed my scrubs. I packed my medical textbooks. I packed my laptop and my charger. I looked at the framed photos on my dresser. One was of me and Tyler when we were children. One was of the whole family at Disney World paid for by my student loans. I left them there. They belonged to a different life. Finally, I looked at the diploma lying on the bed. The calligraphy was elegant and sharp. Dr. Nora Bennett. I traced the last name with my finger. Bennett. It was a name that meant servitude. It was a name that meant coming second. It was a name that meant being the invisible wallet. I sat back down at the computer. I opened a search engine and typed legal name change petition. I downloaded the PDF form. The cursor blinked in the field for the new name. I did not hesitate. I had thought about this name for years during late nights at the library when I dreamed of a different life. Sterling. Silver is pretty, but sterling is strong. It is valuable. It is an alloy that is tougher than the pure element. It shines, but it can endure the fire. I typed it into the box. Nora Sterling. I saved the document. I printed it out on my cheap inkjet printer. The paper was still warm when I picked it up. I signed the bottom line with a pen that scratched against the page. I put the form in an envelope. I put the envelope in my bag. I zipped the suitcase shut. I took one last look at the apartment that had been my holding cell. I turned off the laptop. I walked out the door and locked it behind me. I dropped the key through the mail slot of the landlord's office downstairs. I got into my car and drove toward the highway. I did not look in the rearview mirror. Dr. Bennett was dead. Dr. Sterling was just waking up. The Pacific Northwest does not care if you have a doctorate. It does not care if you graduated at the top of your class. When I arrived in Seattle with nothing but a suitcase and a fragile hope, the city greeted me with a cold, gray shoulder. The first 6 weeks were a brutal lesson in humility. My medical license transfer was stuck in a bureaucratic limbo that moved slower than a glacier. Without the license, I could not practice as a surgeon. Without a job, I could not rent an apartment. The landlords demanded pay stubs and credit checks that I could not provide because I had just nuked my entire financial history to escape my family. So, I lived in my car. It was a 10-year-old sedan with a back seat that did not quite fold down all the way. I parked in the back corner of a 24-hour grocery store lot. I learned which security guards would tap on the glass and tell me to move and which ones would pretend not to see the condensation fogging up the windows. I showered at a local gym using a free trial membership that I rotated between 3 different locations. I ate peanut butter sandwiches in the driver's seat while reading medical journals by the light of a street lamp. Every night I stared at the ceiling of my car and fought the urge to call home. It would be so easy. I could call Bob. I could apologize. I could send money. I could sleep in a bed again. But then I would remember the graduation ceremony. I would remember the sound of the barbecue sizzling while I stood alone, and I would pull my coat tighter around myself and choose the cold. The cold was honest. My family was not. When the paperwork finally cleared, I took the first job I could find. It was a position at a high-volume private trauma clinic downtown. The pay was lower than average, and the hours were punishing, but I did not care. I needed to work. This was where I met Julianne. Julianne was the medical director of the clinic. She was a woman in her 50s with hair the color of steel wool and eyes that could dissect a lie from 50 paces away. She did not smile often. She moved through the chaotic hallways of the clinic with the efficiency of a shark in open water. For the first month, I tried to be invisible. I worked double shifts. I picked up the cases no one else wanted. I stayed late to organize files. I was terrified that if I slowed down for 1 second, the reality of my homelessness would catch up to me. One rainy Tuesday night, Julianne found me in the break room. It was 2 a.m. I was asleep at the small table with my head resting on a stack of patient charts. She slammed a heavy binder onto the table. The noise cracked through the room like a gunshot. I jerked awake. My heart hammered against my ribs. Julianne was watching me while sipping black coffee. She did not look angry. She looked calculating. "You do not have an address listed in your personnel file, Sterling," she said. I sat up straight and tried to smooth my wrinkled scrubs. "I am in between leases." I lied. My voice was raspy from exhaustion. "It is temporary." Julianne raised an eyebrow. "You have been wearing the same 3 sets of scrubs for 5 weeks. You shower in the staff locker room before anyone else arrives. You take the leftover bagels from the morning meeting home in napkins. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but she held up a hand. "I do not care about your poverty, Nora. I care about your focus. You are the best surgeon I have seen in 10 years. But you are running on fumes. You look like a woman who is trying to outrun a ghost." I looked down at my hands. They were trembling slightly. "I just need to prove I am worth it," I whispered. "I need to make sure I am useful. If I am not useful, I am nothing." Julianne pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down. Her gaze softened just a fraction. "Who told you that?" she asked. "My family," I said. The truth spilled out before I could stop it. They only loved me when I was paying for them. I cut them off. Now I have to prove I can survive without them. I have to work harder than everyone else to make up for it. Julianne leaned forward. Her voice was low and fierce. "Listen to me closely. You are a doctor. You save lives every single day. You do not need to earn your right to exist. You are treating yourself like a fuel source instead of a human being." She pointed a finger at my chest. "You do not have a responsibility to set yourself on fire just to keep other people warm. Do you understand me? You can just be warm for yourself." That sentence hit me harder than the cold nights in my car. I started to cry. It was not a polite cry. It was ugly and raw. Julianne did not look away. She sat there and drank her coffee and let me weep until I was empty. Then she gave me the keys to her guest cottage and told me to get 8 hours of sleep or she would fire me. 3 years is a long time. It is enough time for human cells to regenerate. It is enough time for a reputation to be built from concrete and steel. I did not stay in the guest cottage forever. I worked, I saved, I invested. Dr. Nora Sterling became a name that people whispered with respect in the surgical wings of Seattle hospitals. I specialized in complex trauma reconstruction. I fixed things that were shattered. It was poetic work for a woman who had to rebuild her own spine. Now I sat on the balcony of my own apartment. It was on the 25th floor of a glass tower overlooking the Puget Sound. The rain was falling softly against the windows, but I was not cold. I was wrapped in a cashmere blanket that I had bought simply because I liked the texture. The apartment was silent. It was a pristine sanctuary of white marble and warm wood. There were no loud arguments. There were no demands for money. There was no Tyler crashing through the door drunk and needing bail. My phone sat on the table next to a glass of vintage red wine. The block list in my contacts was long. It contained every number associated with the Bennett family. I took a sip of wine. The liquid was rich and complex. I looked out at the city lights shimmering in the rain. I had climbed the mountain. I had clawed my way up from the parking lot to the penthouse. I was alone, but for the first time in my life, I was not lonely. I was free. I had no idea that down in the dark streets below, the ghosts of my past were already looking for the lobby door. While Dr. Sterling was ascending the glass towers of Seattle, the Bennett household was rotting from the foundation up. It did not happen with the dramatic flare of an explosion. It happened with the slow and agonizing creep of a fungal infection. For years, Bob Bennett had lived under a comfortable delusion. He believed he was a financial wizard. He walked around his suburban kingdom with his chest puffed out, convinced that his modest salary as a mid-level manager was somehow stretching to cover a luxury lifestyle. He never looked at the auto-pay notifications. He never questioned why the electricity stayed on during the months he bought new golf clubs instead of paying the utility bill. He simply assumed the universe was rewarding him for being a good man. The reality check arrived in a window envelope stamped with aggressive red ink. It was 3 months after Nora vanished. Bob was sitting at the kitchen table nursing a beer and waiting for Brenda to serve dinner. He slit the envelope open with a butter knife, expecting a routine statement. He pulled out a notice of default. The bank informed him that the mortgage was 90 days past due. The outstanding balance, including late fees, was $7,800. If the amount was not paid in full within 30 days, the foreclosure process would begin. Bob stared at the paper. His brain refused to process the numbers. He yelled for Brenda. Brenda came in wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw the letter, her face went pale. She did not look at Bob. She looked at the empty spot on the counter where Nora used to leave her checkbook. "I thought you paid this!" Bob roared. His face turned a mottled purple. "I thought the auto-pay was handling it." Brenda stammered. "It always just happened. I never had to touch it." They both stared at the paper. The invisible ghost of their daughter stood between them. For the first time, they could not blame her for being present and annoying. They had to blame her absence. The financial hemorrhaging did not stop there. It was a domino effect that moved with terrifying speed. 2 weeks later, the repo man came for the SUV. Tyler was sleeping in until noon as usual. He had spent the entire night screaming at his computer monitor because his investment in a new cryptocurrency had crashed. He had lost $4,000 of his parents' money in 6 hours. He woke up to the sound of a diesel engine idling in the driveway. He ran outside in his boxer shorts. A large man in a tow truck was hooking chains to the axle of the black SUV. "Hey!" Tyler shouted. He ran down the driveway barefoot. "What are you doing? That is my car. Get away from it." The repo man did not even look up. He yanked a lever, and the back wheels of the SUV lifted off the pavement. "It is not your car, kid," he grunted. "The lease has not been paid in 4 months. The primary cardholder reported it as unauthorized use and stopped payments. Kiss it goodbye." Tyler watched his status symbol roll down the street. He stormed back into the house and found his parents arguing over a stack of bills that was now 3 inches high. "You guys are useless!" Tyler screamed. He threw a vase against the wall. "How could you let them take my car? I have a meeting with investors today. How am I supposed to get there? The bus. Do you want me to look like a loser?" Bob stood up. He looked smaller than he had in years. The stress was eating him alive. "We do not have the money, Tyler," he said. His voice was cracked. "Your sister cut us off. She paid for the car. She paid for the mortgage. She paid for everything." Tyler sneered. "Then get her back. Call her. Tell her you are sick. Tell her you are dying. I do not care what you say, just fix it. You drove away the cash cow, and now we are all suffering because you possess zero negotiation skills." He did not mourn the loss of his sister. He mourned the loss of his chauffeur. The final humiliation belonged to Brenda. She had spent months trying to maintain the facade. She posted photos of old vacations on social media with captions like "Missing Paradise" to hide the fact that they could not afford a weekend trip to the coast. She went to the local country club for lunch just to be seen by the right people, even though her membership dues were 3 months behind. It happened at the gourmet grocery store on a Saturday afternoon. The store was crowded with her neighbors and friends. Brenda had a cart full of expensive imported cheeses and organic wines. She was planning a small gathering to prove to everyone that the Bennett family was still thriving. The cashier rang up the total, $215. Brenda swiped her card with a practiced flourish. The machine beeped a harsh, declining tone. Brenda laughed nervously. She felt the eyes of the woman behind her burning into her back. "That is silly," she said. "Try it again. It must be the chip." The cashier swiped it again. "Decline. Insufficient funds." "Please try this one," Brenda said. Her hands were shaking as she pulled a second card from her purse. It was a card she had not used in a year because it was maxed out, but she prayed for a miracle. "Decline." A manager walked over. He was a man Brenda had known for 10 years. He did not smile. "Mrs. Bennett," he said quietly, "we cannot accept your checks either." The last 2 bounced. "We need cash, or you have to leave the groceries." The silence in the line was absolute. Brenda looked around. She saw the pity in the eyes of her neighbors. She saw the smirks of the people she had looked down on for years, the mask she had glued to her face for 2 decades peeled away, leaving nothing but raw panic underneath. She left the cart. She walked out of the store with her head down. She sat in her car and gripped the steering wheel until her fingernails dug into the leather. When she got home, the house was dark. The electricity had been cut off an hour ago. Bob was sitting in the living room, lit only by the gray light of the fading sun. Tyler was in his room, slamming drawers and packing a bag to go stay with a friend who still had beer in the fridge. "We're going to lose the house, Brenda," Bob whispered. Brenda sat on the expensive sofa that she could no longer afford. She looked at the shadows stretching across the floor. "She is doing this to us," Brenda hissed. "She is punishing us. She is selfish and cruel, and she wants to see us fail." Bob shook his head slowly. "No, Brenda," he said. "She is not doing anything. She just stopped doing everything. We are not drowning because she pushed us in. We are drowning because we never learned how to swim." But even in the darkness, neither of them reached for the phone to apologize. They reached for the phone to calculate how much they could sue her for. They did not see a daughter. They saw a stolen asset that needed to be recovered. The peace I had built was a fortress of glass and silence. But glass shatters and silence can be broken by a single digital notification. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office reviewing the post-operative scans of a car accident victim whose face I had rebuilt bone by bone. The rain was lashing against the window of the clinic. My phone sat face up on the mahogany desk. It had been quiet for 3 years. The block list was my shield. Then an email notification popped up on my laptop screen. It was not from a blocked number, it was from a burner address. The subject line was simply, "We found you." My blood ran cold. The sensation was immediate and visceral. It felt like someone had opened the door to my warm office and let a blizzard inside. I opened the email. It contained a link to a Seattle Lifestyle magazine article that had been published 2 days ago. The headline read, "Rising Stars, Top Surgeons Under 40." There was a photo of me standing in the clinic lobby wearing my white coat and looking confident, looking expensive, looking like a woman who had never slept in a sedan in a grocery store parking lot. Underneath the link was a message from my mother Brenda. "Sterling, is that who you are now? You think you can just erase the name your father gave you. You think you can pretend we do not exist while you wear silk and play God. You are a Bennett. You will always be a Bennett." I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking. They had found me. The 3,000 miles between us suddenly felt like 3 inches. The dam broke within hours. Because they knew my new name, they could bypass the old blocks. They found my professional email. They found the clinic's main line. They found my LinkedIn profile. The barrage began with rage. Brenda sent 12 emails in 40 minutes. The tone shifted violently from sentence to sentence. First, it was fury. "How dare you change your name? Do you know how much that hurts your father? He gave you everything. He raised you. And you throw his legacy in the trash like garbage. You are ashamed of us. You think you are better than us because you have money now." Then came the guilt. "Your father saw the article. He collapsed, Nora. He is holding his chest. He has a heart condition now because of the stress you caused. The doctors say he might not make it through the night. He keeps asking for you. He keeps asking why his little girl hates him. Do you want to kill him? Is that your plan?" I sat there and read the lies. I knew they were lies. Bob did not have a heart condition. Bob had a condition called laziness and a secondary condition called cowardice. If he was clutching his chest, it was because the repo man was taking his television, not because he missed his daughter. But the fear was still there. It was the conditioning of a lifetime. The tiny voice in my head whispered, "What if it is true? What if I am the villain?" Then Tyler entered the chat. Tyler did not care about names or legacies or heart attacks. Tyler cared about the bottom line. He sent an email to my work address. The subject line was "Invoice for Services Rendered." I opened it against my better judgment. "Hey, Nora," or "Dr. Sterling," whatever. "I see you are doing well. Nice watch in the picture. Must be nice to be rich while your family starves. Mom is crying every day, but I am a businessman. Let us talk numbers. You lived in our house for 18 years. You ate our food. You used our electricity. We raised you. That was an investment. Now it is time for the payout. I calculated the cost of raising you plus interest. It comes to $200,000. Transfer it to the account below by Friday. If you do not, I will take a flight to Seattle. I will come to your fancy clinic. I will sit in the waiting room, and I will scream at every rich patient who walks in. I will tell them their doctor is a deadbeat who lets her parents eat cat food while she buys designer shoes. I will ruin you, Nora. Do not test me. I have nothing left to lose." I read the threat twice. Tyler was not smart, but he was desperate. And a desperate man with a loud voice is dangerous to a woman whose career is built on reputation. He was going to come here. He was going to bring the smell of stale beer and failure into my sterile sanctuary. I looked at the phone. I looked at the emails piling up. The hunt was over. They had cornered the prey. But they made one critical miscalculation. They thought they had cornered the scared little girl who paid the bills to keep the peace. They did not realize they had cornered Dr. Sterling. And Dr. Sterling knew how to cut. The lobby of the Sterling Clinic was designed to project tranquility. It was a space of muted grays and soft ambient light where the air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and expensive sanitizer. I was standing near the reception desk reviewing a digital chart with my lead nurse. The morning rounds had gone smoothly. The coffee in my hand was warm. For a brief moment I allowed myself to feel safe. Then the automatic glass doors slid open with a hiss. The noise that followed was not the hushed murmur of a patient. It was a chaotic intrusion of heavy footsteps and loud voices. I did not need to turn around to know who had just violated my sanctuary. The hair on the back of my arms stood up. My heart slammed against my ribs with a violence that made my hand shake. I turned slowly. They were standing in the center of the pristine lobby like a stain on a white silk sheet. They looked like they had driven the 200 miles from our hometown without stopping. Their clothes were wrinkled. Their eyes were manic. Brenda saw me first. She let out a sound that was half sob and half shriek. She threw her arms wide and rushed toward the reception desk. Nora. Oh God, Nora. My baby. It was a performance. I knew the tilt of her head. I knew the specific pitch of her wail. It was the same act she used when she wanted to return an item without a receipt or get out of a speeding ticket. She slammed her hands onto the marble counter of the reception desk. The receptionist recoiled in alarm. "Tell her to talk to me," Brenda screamed at the terrified young woman. "Tell my daughter to stop hiding." We drove all night. Look at her. Look at her standing there in her fancy coat while her father dies of a broken heart. The quiet hum of the clinic vanished. Every head turned. Patients lowered their magazines. 2 other doctors stopped in the hallway. I felt the heat of 50 pairs of eyes burning into my skin. This was my nightmare. This was the moment my 2 worlds collided. Tyler stepped out from behind Brenda. He looked worse than I expected. His face was puffy and unshaven. He wore a stained hoodie that I recognized as one I had bought him 4 years ago. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "There she is," he shouted. "The Ice Queen herself. Look at this place. Look at the marble floors." He spun around to face the waiting room full of patients. "Do you people know who this doctor is? Do you know she lets her own family starve? She sits here making millions while we lose our house. She is a fraud. She is a selfish, ungrateful brat who abandoned the people who made her." "Security," I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the air like a scalpel. 2 uniformed guards who had been standing near the elevators moved forward instantly. They were large men who knew me as Dr. Sterling, the woman who saved lives. They did not know me as Nora Bennett, the family mistake. Brenda saw the guards approaching and ramped up the drama. She fell to her knees on the polished floor. She grasped at the edge of a chair and wept loudly. "Please, Nora, just come home. We forgive you. We just want to be a family again. Why are you doing this to us?" The emotional manipulation was suffocating. I felt a tiny crack in my armor. The old instinct to fix it flared up. The instinct to write a check just to make the screaming stop. The instinct to apologize for existing. But then I looked at Tyler. He was not crying. He was scanning the room with a sneer, looking for something to steal or break. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying the humiliation. The crack in my armor sealed shut. The temperature in my veins dropped to 0. I walked toward them. I did not run. I did not hide. I stopped 5 feet away. "Get up, Brenda," I said. She looked up, startled by the use of her first name. She blinked. The tears stopped instantly. "Nora," she whispered. "You are causing a disturbance in a medical facility," I said. My voice was devoid of any emotion. "There are sick people here. There are people recovering from surgery. You are disrespecting them." Tyler stepped into my personal space. He smelled of stale sweat and aggression. "Do not talk down to us," he hissed. "You think you are better than us because you changed your name. You are nothing without us. Give us the money, Nora. Just give us the money and we will leave." One of the security guards stepped between us. He put a hand on Tyler's chest. "Sir, you need to step back. Now!" Tyler swatted the hand away. "Do not touch me. I am talking to my sister." I looked at the lead guard. "Escort them out. If they resist, call the police. I want them trespassed from the property." Brenda scrambled to her feet. Her face twisted from sorrow to pure venom. "You would call the cops on your own mother," she shrieked. "You are a monster." "I am a doctor," I replied. "And you are trespassing." The guards grabbed Tyler by the arms. He began to struggle, shouting obscenities that echoed off the high ceiling. Brenda was grabbing at his sleeve, trying to pull him back while screaming at me. "Wait," I said. The guards paused. The lobby fell into a tense silence. I looked at my family. I looked at the wreckage they had brought into my life. I knew if I just kicked them out, they would come back tomorrow. They would scream outside on the sidewalk. They would contact the news. I needed to end this. I needed to perform the final surgery. I met Tyler's eyes. "I will not give you money today," I said. "And you will never come back to this clinic again. If I see you here one more time, I will have you arrested, and I will press charges for harassment and extortion." Tyler glared at me, but he stopped struggling. "However," I continued, "I will give you one chance to speak. One chance." I pulled a business card from my pocket and wrote an address on the back. It was not my home. It was not the clinic. It was the address of a conference room at a law firm downtown. "Tomorrow at 10 in the morning," I said. "You show up there. You bring whatever grievances you think you have. We will settle this once and for all." I tossed the card onto the floor at Tyler's feet. "If you are 1 minute late, the deal is off. Now get out of my hospital." I turned my back on them. I walked toward the elevators without looking back. Behind me, I heard the scuffle of shoes and the heavy doors sliding open. I heard the murmurs of the patients. I kept my head high. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The doors closed, shutting out the noise. Only then did I allow my hands to shake. I leaned my head against the cool metal wall. They wanted a meeting. They wanted a confrontation. They had no idea that I was not walking into that room to negotiate. I was walking into that room to deliver a verdict. The conference room was a fortress of glass and polished mahogany, suspended 40 floors above the gray streets of Seattle. I had chosen this location deliberately. It was sterile. It was intimidating. It was a place where silence held weight. I sat at the head of the long table. My hands rested on the cool surface of the wood. To my right sat Julianne, who was there not just as my mentor, but as a silent witness. My family sat on the opposite side. They looked like refugees from a disaster they had created themselves. Brenda was wearing a floral dress that was too tight at the seams. Her hair was frizzy, and she kept patting it down with a nervous hand. Bob was slumped in his chair. He wore a suit that smelled faintly of mothballs and defeat. Tyler sat with his legs spread wide in a posture of unearned arrogance, but their eyes were not on my face. Their eyes were fixed on the black Hermes bag resting on the empty chair next to me. They stared at the gold hardware and the supple leather with a hunger that was primal. It was the look of a starving animal spotting a piece of meat. They were not looking at an accessory. They were calculating its resale value. They were mentally spending the money it represented. Tyler leaned forward. He placed his elbows on the table. "So," he said, "we are here. You wanted a meeting. Let us make a deal." "This is not a deal," I said. My voice was as cold as the air conditioning. "This is a hearing." Brenda reached across the table. Her hand hovered in the air like a claw before she pulled it back. "Nora," she said. Her voice trembled with a mixture of fear and greed. "We just want to fix things. We are drowning. Your father is sick. We have no food in the fridge. We are family. You cannot let us suffer like this while you live like a queen." "State your terms," I said. "What do you want?" Tyler pulled a crumpled piece of notebook paper from the pocket of his hoodie. He smoothed it out on the table with a dirty hand. "It is simple," he said. "We did the math. We need a clean slate to get back on our feet." He pointed a finger at the first line of his scribbled notes. "First, you pay off the debt, all of it. The mortgage arrears, the credit cards, the personal loans Mom took out to cover the business. It comes to $150,000. I did not blink. I did not flinch. "Go on," I said. "Second," Tyler continued, his confidence growing as he spoke the numbers. "You buy the house back from the bank before the auction next week. You put the deed in Mom and Dad's name. They need security. They are old. They deserve a home." He paused and smirked. "And third, I need seed money. My last venture failed because of bad timing and bad luck. I have a new concept. It is foolproof. I need $5,000 a month for expenses while I get it off the ground. For 18 months. I looked at them. I looked at the sheer breathtaking magnitude of their audacity. They were asking for nearly $500,000 in assets and cash. They were asking me to fund the very lifestyle that had excluded me for my entire existence. "Let me understand," I said. "You want me to pay $150,000 for debts I did not incur. You want me to buy a house I was kicked out of, and you want me to pay Tyler a salary to sit on a couch." Brenda nodded vigorously. "It sounds like a lot," she said. "But we saw the article, Nora. You are a top surgeon. This is pocket change to you. And we are your blood. We gave you life." Bob finally looked up from the table. His eyes were watery and red. "You owe us, Nora," he croaked. "We raised you. We fed you. We put clothes on your back. You would be nothing without us. You are sitting in this high tower because we sacrificed for you. Now it is your turn to pay the bill." "The bill," I repeated. "Yes," Tyler snapped. "Tyler. The bill for your life. We are calling it in. You are the investment. We are the shareholders. Pay up or we keep making noise." I looked at the hungry vultures sitting across from me. They did not see a daughter. They saw a harvest. They saw a resource to be strip-mined until nothing was left but a hollow shell. They truly believed that giving birth to me was a transaction that entitled them to own my future. I reached for the thick leather portfolio next to my bag. I unzipped it slowly. The sound was like a zipper closing on a body bag. "You brought a wish list," I said. I brought receipts. I lifted the heavy leather portfolio and let it fall onto the polished mahogany table. The sound was a dull, heavy thud that vibrated through the wood and made the water glasses tremble. Brenda jumped in her seat. Tyler stopped smirking. I unzipped the case slowly. I pulled out a stack of papers that was 3 inches thick. I had spent the entire night organizing these documents with the same precision I used to reconstruct a shattered jaw. "You want to talk about debts," I said. My voice was calm and dangerous. "You want to talk about who owes what to whom. Let us look at the ledger." I flipped the binder open to the first section. The pages were covered in rows of highlighted text: yellow for housing, blue for transportation, red for the emergencies they created. I spun the binder around so they could read it. I pointed a manicured finger at the first column. "Look at this line," I said. "January 10th, mortgage payment, $2,400. Source of funds, Nora Sterling." I turned the page. March 15th, lease payment for the black SUV. Tyler drove into the ground, $650. Source of funds, Nora Sterling. I turned 10 more pages. The family vacation to Hawaii 3 years ago. The one you told me I was not invited to because there was not enough room in the condo. $4,200 for flights and lodging. Source of funds, Nora Sterling. I looked up at my father. His face was gray. He was staring at the numbers like they were written in a foreign language. "You called me useless," I said. "You told your friends I was broke. You told the world I was the black sheep. But I have been the invisible spine of this house since I was 20 years old. You did not raise me. I financed you." Brenda tried to speak. Her voice was a dry croak. "Nora, please. I did not let her finish. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I placed it in the center of the table. "You said I was dramatic," I said. "You said I made things up. You said you never hurt me." I pressed the play button. The recording was clear. It cut through the silence of the conference room like a knife. The voice of Bob Bennett filled the air. "Do not be dramatic. It is just a ceremony. It is just a piece of paper. Stop being selfish." Bob flinched as if he had been slapped. He looked at the phone, and then he looked at me. He could not deny his own voice. The cruelty of it hung in the air between us. But I was not done. I tapped the screen again. A video file loaded. It was a clip I had saved from a live stream Tyler had posted 2 years ago. The video showed Tyler standing in the backyard. He was drunk. He was holding a bottle of tequila that cost $200. He was laughing with his friends. "My sister bought the booze." Tyler's voice slurred from the speaker. "She is the family mistake, but at least her credit card works. Cheers to the mistake." I paused the video on Tyler's laughing face. I looked at the real Tyler sitting across from me. He was pale. He was sweating. "That tequila was bought with a card I had given you for emergencies," I said. "You called me a mistake while you drank my money." I closed the laptop. I pushed the binder aside. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single crisp document. I slid it across the mahogany table until it rested in front of Bob. "This is not a negotiation," I said. "This is a verdict." They looked down at the paper. "I will buy the debt from the bank," I said. "I will pay the $150,000 to clear the arrears. I will buy the house." Brenda let out a small, hopeful sob. "Oh, thank God, Nora. Thank you." I held up a hand. "I am not finished," I said. "I will buy the house, but the deed will be in my name alone. It will be my property. And this contract states that you have exactly 30 days to vacate the premises." The hope vanished from Brenda's face. It was replaced by horror. "Vacate," she whispered. "But where will we go?" "That is not my problem," I said. "You are adults. You will figure it out." I pointed to the second clause of the contract. "Furthermore, you will post a public apology on your Facebook account. You will tag me. You will admit that you lied about my finances. You will admit that you neglected me. You will admit that you chose a barbecue over my doctorate. You will leave it up forever." Tyler slammed his hand on the table. "I am not doing that," he shouted. "I am not humiliating myself for you. Then you can go to prison," I said. I looked him dead in the eye. "Because if you do not sign this contract, I will take this file to the district attorney. You used my name to secure a loan for your business last year. I never signed those papers, Tyler. That is identity theft. That is wire fraud. That is a felony that carries a sentence of up to 20 years. Tyler froze. His mouth hung open. He looked at the thick file of evidence. He looked at my face. He realized for the first time that his sister was not bluffing. I tapped the contract with my finger. "Sign the papers, pack your boxes, and tell the world the truth, or watch your son go to jail. The choice is yours." The sound of a pen scratching against paper was the final eulogy for the Bennett family legacy. Tyler signed his name with a hand that trembled violently. Bob signed with his eyes closed, as if he could pretend the nightmare was not happening. Brenda wept silently while the ink dried on the page. They left the conference room without looking back. They did not say goodbye. They did not ask for a hug. They simply walked out the door carrying the weight of their new reality. They were no longer the victims. They were the architects of their own demise who had finally been forced to live in the structure they built. 3 months later, I stood on the sidewalk in front of the house where I had grown up. The lawn was overgrown. The paint on the shutters was peeling. It looked smaller than I remembered. It was no longer a monument to suburban perfection. It was just a building of wood and brick. A white van was parked in the driveway. 2 contractors were carrying a heavy oak dining table out the front door. It was the same table where I had been told I was a mistake. It was the same table where I had been ignored for 2 decades. I watched them load it into the truck to be taken to the dump. I was not selling the house. I was repurposing it. The interior walls were being knocked down to create open, bright spaces. The bedrooms were being converted into counseling offices and emergency housing. Next month, the brass plaque on the door would read, "The Sterling Center for Youth Independence." It would be a sanctuary for kids who had been told they were burdens. It would be the home I never had. I did not feel sad. I felt light. I felt the kind of peace that settles over a battlefield after the smoke clears. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from social media. A friend had sent me a screenshot. It was a photo of Tyler. He was wearing an orange vest and loading boxes into a delivery truck. The caption said nothing. It was just an image of a man finally working for his survival. Brenda and Bob were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Bob was working as a greeter at a hardware store. Brenda was stocking shelves at a discount bakery. They were alive. They were safe. But they were ordinary. The spotlight they craved had been turned off forever. They were living the small, quiet lives they had always feared, and it was the most just punishment I could imagine. I walked back to my car. It was a sleek silver coupe that I had bought with my own money. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. The engine purred with a deep, satisfying rumble. I was not going back to an empty apartment. I was going to a dinner party at my penthouse. Julianne would be there. My friends from the hospital would be there. People who loved me, not because I paid their bills, but because I was Nora. I pulled away from the curb. I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. I did not blink. I did not turn around. I drove toward the city skyline that glittered in the distance. The road ahead was wide and open. The name on my doctorate was Sterling. The blood in my veins was my own. And for the first time in 30 years, the silence in my heart was not empty. It was full. We are often taught that family is a bond that cannot be broken, a sanctuary of unconditional love. But sometimes shared DNA is nothing more than a biological coincidence. True loyalty isn't about enduring abuse to keep the peace. It is about having the courage to set boundaries that protect your soul. You are not responsible for carrying the baggage of those who refuse to walk on their own. The most profound act of love you can offer is sometimes the love you give to yourself by walking away from those who only value you when you are useful and building a home where you are valued simply for being you.